I was lying in bed, still in my white silk robe, thinking about the wedding just 2 weeks away, when my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. No words, just a photo. My fiancé. In bed. With my sister. And her belly was showing. I dropped the phone. I couldn't breathe. I rushed to confront them, tears blinding my eyes. But what shattered me wasn't just their betrayal. It was when my own mother looked me in the eye and said, "They're in love. And honestly, sweetie, they make a better couple." I stood there, numb, watching my entire family, my mother, my father, my sister, and the man I thought would be my husband standing on the same side. They took everything from me, my dignity, my future, my home. But what they didn't know was that I wasn't going to disappear quietly. I vanished from their lives, and for months, they thought I was broken, gone. Until the baby shower, until the paternity test, until the inheritance. And when the truth came out, they wished I had stayed gone. If you've ever been betrayed by your own blood, this story is for you. Subscribe now, because what you're about to hear is only the beginning. My name is Elena Hartwell, and if you had asked me 6 months ago what my life looked like, I would have told you perfect. I was engaged to a man I adored, Nathan Caldwell, a respected ER doctor with the kindest smile and the gentlest soul. We were just 2 weeks away from our wedding. The dress was tailored, the guests invited, and the venue booked. I had my dream ring, my dream man, and a Pinterest board full of centerpieces to obsess over. But on a rainy Thursday morning, everything cracked. I was still in bed, half asleep, when my phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. No message, just a photo. Nathan, in bed, with my sister Vanessa, and her pregnant belly. Oh my God! At first, I stared at the screen like it was a prank, a cruel deepfake. But I knew that hotel room wallpaper. I had been there before with Nathan on a conference trip, and that was definitely Vanessa's silk scarf on the side table. I couldn't breathe. My stomach flipped. My fingers were shaking. I called Nathan straight to voicemail. I called Vanessa, no answer. And then I drove straight to my parents' house, like an idiot. I burst in without knocking. My heart was pounding through my ears. My mother was in the kitchen, casually sipping coffee like nothing had happened. And then I saw them, Vanessa and Nathan, sitting together on the couch, her hand on his other hand resting gently on her belly. What the hell was I looking at? Before I could say a word, Vanessa looked up and said, "You weren't supposed to find out like this." What? Nathan stood up, half ashamed, half defensive. "I was going to talk to you, Elena, but it just happened. I didn't plan this." Didn't plan this? My sister was pregnant with my fiancé's child. I turned to my mother, the one woman who should have had my back. She sighed and said something that still echoes in my skull every night, "Sweetheart. I know this hurts, but maybe it's for the best. I mean, look at them. They're a beautiful couple, and sometimes fate has other plans." I blinked. I looked around, hoping this was some twisted hallucination, but my dad walked in and said, "We're not picking sides, honey, but Nathan makes Vanessa happy. Maybe you two just weren't meant to be." I nearly screamed. My own parents were siding with them. I walked out of that house in silence. I didn't even grab my things. My wedding was gone. My fiancé was gone. My family had chosen betrayal over loyalty. And I was left with nothing but a broken heart and 1,000 questions. But here's what they didn't know. I had no intention of disappearing quietly. The days that followed were a blur. I stayed in a cheap motel near the outskirts of town, too ashamed to face anyone I knew. I had deleted my social media, blocked half my contacts, and barely ate. But somewhere in that quiet, something inside me began to shift. I replayed every conversation, every red flag I had ignored, the late night shifts Nathan claimed to have, the way Vanessa would constantly drop by during our date nights, the way my mother always compared me to Vanessa like I was a discount version of her, the golden child, the perfect one. I was always the afterthought in my own family. And now, I had been discarded like a stain on their perfect image. But I wasn't weak, not anymore. I started making a list: names, dates, memories. I thought back to every time Nathan had disappeared suddenly. I remembered an old friend, Mia, who worked at the hospital where Nathan did. I texted her casually. Hey, do you remember if Nathan ever stayed late on the night of August 10th? Mia replied within minutes. Not sure why, but no. He wasn't even on call that week. Why? I didn't reply. Because I remembered that was the night he told me he was doing a double shift and Vanessa had come by to cheer him up. Oh, it was already happening then. It was already. I started connecting dots. Then, something else clicked: my job. I worked for my father's company. Marketing director? That's what it said on paper. In truth, I was running the operations of 2 regional branches while Vanessa got to play creative VP and post on Instagram all day. So when I emailed HR asking about my health insurance just to make sure it was still active, I got this reply. Your employee record has been marked inactive as of last Friday. Wait, what? They fired me quietly, without notice, no severance, no explanation, just like that. I called. My father's secretary said Mr. Hartwell instructed us to process all personal matters through legal counsel. He had locked me out of my own job, out of the family business, just so his favorite daughter wouldn't be uncomfortable with me around. That was it. That was the breaking point. They didn't just steal my fiancé. They stole my dignity, my livelihood, my place in the world. And that's when I decided, if they wanted me gone, I'd give them silence. But not surrender. I packed up my car, left town, changed my number. And for the next 4 months, they heard nothing from me. But I was building something. Something quiet, something sharp. And when the time came, I would make every one of them regret ever thinking I would stay silent. I disappeared, not in some dramatic, fake your death kind of way. No. I vanished the quiet way, the kind that hurts the people left behind because they assume you're broken. And I wanted them to assume exactly that. I left the city without a word. No dramatic goodbye. No social media post. Just me, my car, and the few things I still owned. I drove 3 hours south until I reached a coastal town called Fairhaven. Quiet, misty, and gray. It matched how I felt inside. I rented a furnished apartment above an old bookstore. It had squeaky floorboards, mismatched chairs, and a view of the ocean that somehow calmed the screaming in my head. For the first time in weeks, I could breathe, but I didn't rest. I had work to do. The first thing I did was buy a burner phone and create a new email account under a different name, my mother's maiden name, Elena Turner. No one from my old life could trace me through it. Then, I started watching them. Vanessa was still doing what she did best, putting on a performance for the world. She posted photos of her glowing belly, Nathan rubbing her back during baby shopping trips, my parents standing proudly beside them. I studied every photo like a map, every caption, every tag, every detail. That's when I noticed something strange. Vanessa, the girl who had dreamed of being a bride since she was 10, wasn't talking about wedding plans. No ring photos, no engagement announcement, no bridal shower. That wasn't like her. She lived to be adored. So why no wedding? Then another thing hit me. Nathan's name had disappeared from the state medical board's online registry. I searched 3 times. Nothing. His license was gone. I reached out to Claire, a college friend who now worked in hospital compliance in Chicago. I told her I was writing an article on ER malpractice. She owed me a favor. 2 days later, she sent me a file with a big red flag. Nathan had been under investigation for opioid overprescription and had his license suspended pending review. It wasn't public knowledge yet, but it explained why he suddenly had so much free time to play house with my sister. So now I knew Nathan wasn't just a cheater, he was a walking scandal. Then I turned my attention to my father's company. I still had allies there. People who had quietly admired my work but never had the power to speak up while Vanessa hogged the spotlight. I reached out to Jeremy, a junior accountant I had once mentored. We met in a gas station parking lot like spies in a bad movie. He looked nervous but determined. He told me that after I left, Vanessa had been given a made-up title Chief Strategy Officer and immediately started approving massive budgets for brand campaigns that didn't actually exist. Fake invoices, dummy vendors, missing funds. When he brought it up, he was told to mind his own business. But he had saved copies. Lots of them. I took it all, the invoices, the emails, even the wire transfer receipts. And there it was, her name, alongside Nathan's. Apparently, Vanessa had created multiple shell companies registered in Delaware and funneled money from the family business through them, with Nathan listed as project manager. So that was it. They weren't just a couple, they were partners in crime, real crime. I needed a lawyer, a ruthless one. I found Samantha Dell, a sharp, calculating corporate attorney with a reputation for ripping apart white-collar fraud rings. I met her in her high-rise office downtown and handed over everything I had. She took one look at the files and said, "This is strong, very strong. We can take this to court, if you're ready for war." I told her I wasn't just ready, I was already in it. But there was still one piece missing, one thing that would push the entire castle over. The baby. Because here's the truth. Something about the timeline never sat right with me. The night Nathan told me he was working late, the same night Vanessa stopped by to comfort him. That was nearly 6 months before her pregnancy announcement. It didn't match. I wanted to believe she was lying, but I needed proof. So I waited for an opportunity. It came when Vanessa posted about an upcoming prenatal appointment at Willow Creek Maternity Hospital, the same place my old friend Zoe still worked as a nurse. Zoe and I hadn't spoken in months, but she had always hated Vanessa's attitude. I sent her a message. "Zoe, I need a favor. It's big and it's risky." She replied within minutes, "For you, anything." That week, Vanessa went in for routine tests. Zoe managed to intercept a duplicate vial of her prenatal blood sample, the ones used for genetic screening, and swapped in a new sample for the lab. She packed the original in a sealed envelope and shipped it directly to me. I paired it with something I had held onto in the bottom of a drawer, Nathan's old toothbrush, a forgotten relic from when he used to stay over, DNA gold. I paid for a private test under a pseudonym and waited. 2 weeks passed. Then the email came. Result percent probability of paternity. The baby wasn't Nathan's. I sat in my apartment holding the paper, heart pounding, staring at those words. It wasn't just betrayal. It was deception stacked on deception. Vanessa had fooled Nathan, too. And if I played my cards right, this would ruin everything, not just their image, but their power. From that moment on, the plan became crystal clear. I organized every file, every piece of evidence, into a digital archive. I wrote out timelines, labeled folders, color-coded everything. I hired a digital forensics team to trace the shell companies back to Vanessa's LLCs. I even requested records from the Department of Corporations. Then I made one final call. Marianne Blake. We had done a group project together in grad school. Now, She ran one of the fastest growing YouTube channels and podcasts on corporate scandals and family betrayal. I pitched her the entire story anonymously: the sister, the fiancé, the fraud, the pregnancy, the DNA test. She was stunned, and she wanted all of it. She agreed to drop the story the day after Vanessa's baby shower. I had just one thing left to do: return. Because somewhere in their delusional minds, they believed I was gone forever, that I was defeated, that I wouldn't dare show my face. But they were wrong. I had received an invitation, an actual invite to the baby shower from my father, like nothing had ever happened. No apology, no explanation, just a subject line that said, "We'd love to see you there. Family always comes first." They had no idea just how true that statement was about to become. Because this time, I wasn't showing up as the forgotten daughter. I was walking in as the reckoning. The baby shower was held at a private vineyard on the outskirts of town. Classy, expensive, curated to look like a magazine spread, exactly Vanessa's style. When I pulled up, the parking lot was already lined with Teslas, BMWs, and pastel-colored gift bags peeking out from luxury trunks. I stayed in the car for a few minutes, letting my heart rate settle. The sky was a soft gray, threatening rain but holding back just like me. I hadn't seen my family in nearly 4 months. Not a single call, not a single apology. And now, here I was standing in heels again, not as the bride-to-be, not as the daughter they used to parade around, but as something they didn't see coming. The dress I wore was elegant, sleek, dark navy silk that hugged my body with quiet power. My hair was pinned up, simple and strong. I didn't want to look dramatic, I wanted to look unbothered. When I walked through the entrance arch lined with white roses and balloons that said, "It's a girl," several heads turned. Some people recognized me instantly. Others whispered as they strained to remember who I was. But when Vanessa saw me, her smile froze. She was standing near a champagne tower, holding a mocktail, her baby bump on full display in a pale pink designer dress. Nathan was at her side, trying to look comfortable in a blazer 2 sizes too tight. I walked straight toward them, no hesitation. Vanessa blinked like she was seeing a ghost. "Elena," she said, all fake sweetness and confusion. "Wow. I didn't think you'd actually come." "Your invite said family always comes first," I replied calmly. "I just wanted to honor that." Nathan looked visibly uncomfortable. His hand twitched at his side, but he didn't speak. My mother came rushing over, too excited to notice the tension. "Elena, darling, you look, well, you've lost weight. Are you eating enough? Your sister is glowing, isn't she?" I turned to my mother slowly and gave her a smile that didn't touch my eyes. "She's certainly full of surprises." I wandered through the crowd with a glass of sparkling water in hand, greeting old acquaintances, co-workers from my father's company, relatives who gave me those tight, fake hugs and whispered, "So glad you're okay now." They didn't mean it. Most of them had chosen not to reach out when I vanished. They were just relieved I hadn't made a public scene yet. And then came the speeches. My father stepped up to the microphone, glowing with pride. He started with some tired joke about being a girl dad times 2, then launched into a story about how Vanessa had always been destined to be a mother. People laughed politely. Vanessa beamed. Then he said something that made my spine tighten. "And Nathan, our future son-in-law, you've been a rock for this family. We're lucky to have you, truly, and I just know you'll be a wonderful father." I took a deep breath. It was time. I stepped forward as he finished and placed my hand gently on the mic before he could walk away. "I'd like to say a few words," I said. There was a pause, confused clapping, murmurs. My father looked thrown but forced a smile and handed me the mic. I stood under the pergola, surrounded by people who had erased me from their lives. I looked at Vanessa, then Nathan, then straight at my parents. First of all, thank you for inviting me. It means a lot to be remembered, even if just as a footnote in this fairy tale. A few nervous chuckles echoed. I smiled faintly. You see, for a while, I thought I was the villain in this story, the bitter ex, the jealous sister, the one who couldn't let go. That's what I was told. That's what I almost believed. I reached into my clutch and pulled out a single envelope. But then I started looking closer, and what I found was much worse than betrayal. What I found was a pattern of deception, theft, and lies. And I turned to Vanessa. You've always gotten what you wanted, haven't you? Including the men. But sometimes, what we think we're stealing isn't what it seems. I opened the envelope and held up a piece of paper. This is a paternity test, conducted using a blood sample drawn from your prenatal screening at Willow Creek and a DNA match from Nathan's toothbrush. You might want to sit down for this. Nathan. Gasps spread through the crowd. Vanessa's face went pale. This test proves, with zero doubt, that Nathan is not the father of the baby you're celebrating today. There was silence. Absolute stunned silence. Vanessa's glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the ground. Nathan stepped back, his face twitching with disbelief. What? That's not possible. I'm afraid it is, I said quietly, and I have a legal chain of custody to back it up. I turned to my parents. But don't worry, the surprises don't stop there. The new chief strategy officer of your beloved company has been embezzling funds through fake brand initiatives and shell companies. And guess who she hired as her partner in fraud? I pointed at Nathan. You thought you were gaining a new son. Turns out, you were hiring your own executioner. My father stepped forward, red-faced. Elena, this isn't the time or place. I looked at him, eyes steady. Oh, it's exactly the time and place. You taught me that appearances matter more than truth, that silence is preferable to conflict, but not today. I turned to the crowd, some now pulling out their phones, some backing away. If you've ever wondered what it looks like when a golden family eats itself from the inside out, you're witnessing it. But don't worry, there's more coming. I walked away from the mic as the whispers grew louder. Behind me, Vanessa was shaking, my mother trying to hold her up, Nathan yelling something no one could quite understand. I didn't stop. I didn't look back. Outside the vineyard gates, I got into my car, closed the door, and exhaled. It was done. The bomb had dropped. But this wasn't the end. It was just the first crack in the foundation. The day after the baby shower, I woke up to my inbox flooded with messages. Some were from numbers I didn't recognize. Others were from people I hadn't heard from in years. And all of them were saying the same thing. It's everywhere. I opened my laptop, clicked on YouTube, and there it was, the headline across the screen of Marianne Blake's newest upload. The Golden Sister and the Doctor, a family empire built on lies and how it crashed. In less than 12 hours, the video had already reached over 800,000 views. The thumbnail was striking a blurred-out hospital hallway, a fake invoice in the foreground, and bold text that read, DNA, deception, embezzlement. Marianne's voice narrated the story masterfully, laying out every detail I had given her from the suspicious relationship timeline between Vanessa and Nathan, to the forged invoices, the Delaware shell companies, the DNA results, and even screenshots of Vanessa's private posts bragging about winning. She blurred names and faces for legal reasons, but it didn't matter. Anyone in our town, hell, anyone who had been at that baby shower knew exactly who the video was about. And by the time the video ended, Marianne had directed viewers to a separate page where she had uploaded a 50-page PDF titled Anonymous Source Documentation Archive. That was mine. Every file, every spreadsheet, every photograph, every email thread, all neatly organized and time-stamped. Not a single item faked. It was real. All of it. By noon, it had gone viral on Twitter. By 2 p.m., it was trending on TikTok. By nightfall, I got a call from Samantha, my attorney. Elena, she said, her voice calm but serious. We've got movement. The State Board of Medical Licensure has officially reopened Nathan's case, and the IRS has contacted me regarding the business documentation. They want a full audit of your father's company. I closed my eyes. It was happening. All of it. Meanwhile, my parents were desperately trying to do damage control. I heard from Zoe that Vanessa had been hospitalized briefly for stress-related complications. Nathan had been asked to vacate the apartment he was subletting through one of Vanessa's dummy corporations. And my father had been forced to freeze company accounts pending legal review. But the best part, I wasn't even the one pressing charges. Once the documentation went public, the authorities didn't need my help. The fraud was federal, the financial trail too obvious to ignore. I was just the messenger in my hands. Legally, we're clean. The public was eating it up. Comments on Marianne's video ranged from, "This is better than Netflix," to, "How does someone sleep with her sister's fiancé and commit fraud while pregnant?" The internet has no mercy, and neither did I. But I wasn't done. I knew my family better than anyone, and I knew that the one thing they feared more than jail was shame. Public shame. Lasting shame. I wanted them to feel what I had felt when they humiliated me. I wanted them to drown in it. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I wrote a letter to the shareholders of my father's company. Not as Elena Hartwell, but as Elena Turner, a concerned former employee, whistleblower, and stakeholder in the company's ethical integrity. It wasn't long, just 3 paragraphs, professional, precise. In it, I detailed the internal misuse of funds, the fraudulent project approvals, the falsified invoices, and the growing public scandal, and I urged them to consider appointing a neutral third-party auditor and interim CEO while investigations continued. I sent it directly to the board, then I waited. Within a week, the board issued a statement. My father would be stepping down temporarily, pending the outcome of the audit. Vanessa's role would be reassessed, and all PR contracts approved during the last fiscal year were suspended. Boom! I didn't just take down my sister and ex-fiancé. I dismantled the entire structure that enabled them. But the biggest twist, I still wasn't done. Because while the world was watching them burn, I was quietly building something of my own. While Vanessa was hiding from reporters, and my father was dodging federal auditors, I was quietly working in a rented co-working space near the Fairhaven Marina, a plain room with white walls, mismatched chairs, and a coffee machine that barely worked. But it was mine. It was free of their voices, their shadows, their expectations. I could think. I could breathe. And I could build. You see, before they pushed me out, I had been working on a proposal, a side project for the company that I had pitched to my father 3 times. Each time, he smiled politely and said it was too ambitious or not aligned with our core image, which really meant Vanessa didn't understand it, so he didn't want it. The idea was simple but powerful, a mobile platform designed to help low-income, first-time mothers track their pregnancy journey, access medical guidance, and connect with real OB nurses and doulas. Something accessible, non-judgmental, and designed by women who actually listened. I had done the market research. I had the wireframes. I had even found a group of nurses willing to participate in beta testing. But the project was buried, dismissed. Until now. With nothing left to lose and a point to prove, I pulled out the old pitch deck, rebranded it under a new name, Nestwell, and started making calls. I reached out to former partners, health tech developers, two Stanford alums I had met during a corporate retreat, and even a PR contact from a conference years ago. One by one, they listened. Not all said yes, but enough of them did. And then came the miracle. Carolyn Myers, a venture capitalist. I had met once through a friend called me back after reading my proposal. She didn't care about the family drama. She only cared about the numbers. And Nestwell had a clean model, a huge untapped market, and a compelling founder story, even if she didn't know all of it. "I'll fund your pilot," she said over Zoom, "but only if you're willing to lead it publicly. This has to have a face your face." I hesitated. I hadn't used my real name in months, but then I remembered the baby shower, the smirk on Vanessa's face, the speech from my father, the utter erasure of my identity. "I'm in," I said. "Under one condition, I keep full creative control." Carolyn smiled. "Deal." We signed the term sheet the following week. I rented a proper office space, hired two developers, designed the brand identity myself. I poured everything into it, my anger, my grief, my vision. And Nestwell launched 6 weeks later. It wasn't a media sensation at first, but it didn't need to be. Within a month, we had over 10,000 downloads. Nurses were signing up, mothers were writing in. The press started to take notice. And one morning, I woke up to an email from a journalist at Forbes Women. Subject: request for interview, the founder of Nestwell. I stared at the screen for a long time. It felt surreal. I told my story carefully. I didn't name names. I didn't need to. I talked about being dismissed, underestimated, and ignored in favor of flashier voices. I talked about being told to be quiet, to be patient, to be agreeable, and how, when I stopped listening to those voices, everything changed. The article ran under the headline, "From Rock Bottom to Startup CEO, How One Woman Reclaimed Her Power Through Purpose." And suddenly, the world saw me again not as a footnote in someone else's scandal, but as a leader in my own right. My inbox exploded. Funding offers, partnership requests, panels, podcasts. People wanted to hear my voice now, the same voice they once ignored. But the most unexpected thing, so did my family. It started small. A message from my cousin Claire: "I saw your article. I'm proud of you." Then came a DM from an old colleague: "Did you really build that in 4 months? You're incredible." And then a message from my father: "We should talk. I owe you more than an apology." I didn't respond. Not yet. Because I had nothing to prove anymore. My revenge wasn't loud. It didn't come from screaming in their faces or burning down their house. It came from building something they could never destroy. Something real. And now I had one more move to make. A month after the Forbes article, I received a message marked confidential from my lawyer, Samantha. It was a forwarded memo from the board of directors of Hartwell Group, my family's company. They were calling for an emergency shareholders meeting. The audit had uncovered enough discrepancies to trigger a full restructuring vote. Vanessa had officially resigned for health reasons. My father had been placed on administrative leave pending a final decision on his leadership. The company was hemorrhaging credibility, and investors wanted answers. And in the fine print of that memo, one detail caught my eye. Shareholders holding 18.7% of the company had requested this special meeting. I smiled. Because I knew who those shares belonged to. Me. Well, not directly. The deal had been made weeks earlier, with Carolyn Myers as the face. I had arranged to purchase a portion of Hartwell Group stock from a silent investor, one who had grown tired of my father's excuses and was happy to cash out. I used the initial revenue from Nestwell, matched with funds Carolyn personally guaranteed, to acquire the shares quietly. My name never appeared on the contracts, but I was the real force behind it. And now I had voting rights. Not enough to own the company, but enough to block any decision, enough to demand change, enough to walk into that meeting and look every person who had cast me aside square in the eye, not as their daughter, not as the girl they betrayed, but as the woman who held the balance of power. The meeting was scheduled for 9:00 a.m. on a crisp Monday morning, held in the Hartwell Executive Boardroom on the 40th floor of the company's glass skyscraper downtown, the same room I had once been asked to wait outside while Vanessa made presentations on work I had done. This time, I arrived early, dressed in a black blazer, tailored slacks, and a soft white blouse. Minimal makeup, no statement jewelry. I didn't need flash. I had the truth. When I walked into the boardroom, heads turned, the air changed. My father was already seated near the center, flanked by two of his longtime allies. His hair looked grayer than I remembered. His eyes met mine, and for a moment, I saw something in them that had never been there before. Not anger, not pride, but hesitation. Vanessa wasn't there. I had heard she had moved temporarily to Arizona to recover, though some rumors said she was negotiating a plea deal in exchange for cooperating with investigators. The other board members murmured quietly as I took my seat at the end of the long, polished table. My name tag simply read, Ms. Turner Representative, CM Holdings LLC. The meeting began. The chairwoman introduced the agenda, read aloud the findings from the audit, and invited my father to give a statement. He stood slowly and adjusted his tie. His voice was calm but forced. I've served this company for 35 years. I built it from the ground up. I trusted the people closest to me. And I made mistakes. He paused, glanced at me, then looked down again. But I believe in second chances. I believe this company deserves to stay in the hands of the family that founded it. He sat down. The room went silent. All eyes turned to me. The chairwoman cleared her throat. Ms. Turner, you requested to speak on behalf of CM Holdings. The floor is yours. I stood, slowly, deliberately. Thank you. Madam Chair, I began, voice steady. I appreciate the opportunity to speak not just as a shareholder, but as someone who knows this company inside and out. A few heads nodded. I continued. I worked here for nearly a decade. I built departments. I mentored teams. I created systems that are still in use today. And I did all of it while being told I was less valuable than someone who spent more time shopping than strategizing. I was pushed out, humiliated, and silenced. Not because I failed, but because I didn't fit their idea of who should win. I looked at my father. He didn't look away. But I didn't come back today to air grievances. I came back because I believe this company can still be saved, but only if it stops rewarding blood over merit. Only if it stops hiding behind legacy and starts embracing transparency. I took a breath. Let the room feel the weight of what was coming. CM Holdings is prepared to offer strategic leadership support under the condition that a new, independent CEO be appointed. Someone with no family ties. Someone with a track record of ethical leadership and operational reform. I placed a single envelope on the table. And should that condition be rejected, CM Holdings will begin the process of divesting its 18.7% share publicly and encouraging others to do the same. The threat was clear. If they didn't let go of the old regime, the company would crash, and they all knew it. The room erupted in whispers. My father leaned forward. "Who are you?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. "Really?" I turned to him. "I'm Elena Hartwell, the daughter you underestimated, the voice you ignored, the one who saw the cracks long before they shattered. And now, I'm the one holding the glue, but I'm not giving it back for free." He looked stunned. The vote was called 2 hours later. The motion passed. Hartwell Group would appoint an interim CEO and outsider and begin restructuring with guidance from CM Holdings. I walked out of that building without a trace of triumph on my face. I didn't need it. The real victory was watching the look in my father's eyes when he realized he'd lost something he thought he owned forever control. And me, I walked back into my world. But this time, I was the one at the top. It's strange how quiet the world becomes after a storm. There were no more headlines now, no new emails from lawyers, no whispers of, "Did you hear what her sister did?" or "Can you believe her father let it all happen?" The noise faded. What remained was me. And for the first time in my life, that was enough. Vanessa took a plea deal. She avoided jail time but lost everything else: her career, her reputation, and most painfully, custody of her daughter. Nathan disappeared from the public eye. Word is he moved out of state, possibly changed his name. No medical board will touch him again. My parents tried to rebuild. They issued a formal apology, not to me, of course, but to the shareholders. A crafted, cold apology designed for damage control. I never responded. I never needed to. One morning, months later, I received a letter, handwritten, from my mother. It wasn't long. She didn't beg. She didn't justify. She simply wrote, "You were right, and we lost you the moment we chose not to see you. I hope someday you'll let us try again." I read it once. Then I folded it, slid it into a drawer, and left it there. Some wounds don't need revenge. Some wounds just need to be acknowledged quietly, painfully, permanently. Nestwell kept growing. Our app was featured in TechCrunch. We launched a scholarship program for teen moms. I spoke at 2 conferences. Sometimes, I would catch my own name in headlines and barely recognize it. Not because I had changed, but because I had finally returned to the version of myself I had always been before they made me doubt her. The strong one. The silent one. The girl they forgot. The woman they couldn't erase. One evening, after a long workday, I stood in my office, lights low, looking out over the city skyline. The same city that had once tried to swallow me whole now shimmered like something new. My reflection stared back in the glass, steady, calm, proud. A colleague came in and asked, "Do you regret it, any of it?" I paused, then said, "I regret trusting people who made me feel small, but I don't regret walking away. And I never regret coming back stronger." Because here's the truth: revenge isn't always fire and fury. Sometimes it's success. Sometimes it's silence. And sometimes it's standing in a room full of people who once threw you away and watching them flinch when you walk in. Not because you screamed, but because you smiled. So, to anyone out there who's ever been betrayed by the people who were supposed to protect you, to anyone who's been called the problem just for speaking the truth, to anyone who walked away without closure and built something better on their own, this story is for you. And if it resonated with even a part of your journey, hit subscribe. Because there are more stories like this. Stories they tried to silence. But we're not quiet anymore.